Hello, and welcome to Piaget's concrete operational stage. In this stage, we're going to discuss how children have moved beyond the sensory motor stage, beyond the pre-operational stage, and now are able to understand the world as long as it is concrete, as long as it is something that they can touch, they can interact with, they can see directly. Now they can appear logical as long as they have those criteria met. The biggest hallmark of the concrete operational stage is conservation. So we had talked in the pre-operational stage about a lack of conservation. Once children start to display conservation, we know that they have moved into the concrete operational stage. So we have logic as long as it is in the concrete. We have conservation, and there's a predictable sequence of skill acquisition from the pre-operational child not having concrete operations at all to, honestly, once they have all of these concrete operations under their belt, they're probably moving into the formal operational stage. So this is a process across the concrete operational stage in a sequence of acquiring the conservation rules. So let's talk a little bit about those things that are acquired and in what order. First, we have conservation of number. When we do Piagetian conservation tasks and we show a child two rows of coins, and there's the same number of coins in each row, and the rows are equally spaced as they appear in the left-hand panel here, the child will very easily agree that that is the same number of coins. A pre-operational child, if you spread out one of the rows, as is depicted in the right-hand panel, a pre-operational child will now think that the longer row has more. If it's taking up more space, it must have more. Even pre-operational children who can count will make this mistake. Oftentimes you'll have a 4.5-year-old who can easily count to 6, who will count the number of coins in each row when they're stacked together, as depicted in the left-hand side. And then when you spread it out for them, as we see in the right-hand panel, they'll suddenly say there's more. And if you ask them, did you see me add any more? No. Did you see me take any away? No. Why don't you count them? They'll count them, and they oftentimes will still say, but this one's bigger. This one is wider. This one is, a lot of times they'll do it with their hands. This one is like this, and this one is like this. So pre-operational children think something else is going on besides just how many coins are in the row. Whereas once you've achieved conservation, this first skill is, I can just count it and confirm it. I can just count how many objects are. I don't have to be tricked by the shape of the objects or how much space is occupied or how much of the table is covered. I don't have to be tricked by those things anymore. I can just count it and confirm. So number tends to be the first one to be achieved. Then we have length. So in this test, on the left-hand panel, you see two chopsticks or knitting needles or something, two long objects. It could be uncooked spaghetti. If you want to try these things at home because you have a child of the right age, I like to give you ideas of objects that you could put out. So something that is two unsharpened pencils, I've done that before. So you start with two things of the same type and size, so it's really obvious that they're the same. And then you just move one of them forward. So you can pick whichever one, top or bottom, move one forward so that they look like they do in the right-hand panel. Pre-operational children will think that the one that's farther from their viewpoint forward, I don't know how they decide what the forward is, but from their view, they'll say one of them seems farther forward and that one's longer. So they're fixating on something. I don't know exactly whether they visualize a mark on the table, or if maybe a child who's right-hand dominant will focus on which one's farther right, or the one who's left-hand dominant will go to the left. It doesn't seem like there's a consistent rule to determine which one they think is forward. But they will say one of them is farther forward, that one is the long one. Once a child has achieved conservation of number, typically the next thing that they will get is the awareness that all you did was move the objects. There's still two of them. They didn't fundamentally grow or shrink, and so they are in fact the same length, even though they look different now. Conservation of volume tends to come next. So we start off with the glasses looking the same. And a lot of times when you're doing this kind of test on a child, you would want them to confirm to you that the water has been poured to the same level in both glasses. And sometimes they'll sort of go, well, this one has a little bit more, and they'll make you pour it back and forth a couple of times. But you want to do that so that they feel satisfied that the two glasses are starting out with the same amount of water or whatever fluid you have in there. Then you pour one, you tell them, watch me, and you pour one of the liquids into a different shape of container. In this case, they're pouring it into a wider, shorter container. A lot of times when you watch YouTube videos like ones that I've provided in class, they pour it into a taller, skinnier one. It doesn't matter really. It's just that on average, the child will think that the one that is taller has more. They tend to fixate, or as Piaget calls it, centrate on height. Rarely do they compensate width and say, well, this one's wider, so it takes up more, but they might. It's not just about which one moved. It's about whichever feature they're focusing on that will determine which one they think has more. Once we have achieved conservation of number and we've achieved conservation of length, typically volume will come next. Now, is it perfect? I want you to reflect on your own grown-up, what Piaget would say, formal operational self, a person who should be able to think logically about the world. And think about times that you've made mistakes in volume, where you were convinced that amount of liquid was not going to fit into this container, or you were convinced it was going to and it poured over, or you bought something because it seemed like it had more, and it turns out that actually the two objects in contention, these two sodas or these bottles of shampoo or whatever you were buying, and you thought one of them, it looks bigger and it has more, and then you look at the label and you say, well, oh my gosh, they both have 12 ounces. This is crazy. How does it look so different? Like, the shape can even affect us adults. And I mean adults too. I don't mean teenagers exclude. I'm like, literally as an adult, sometimes we will buy something thinking we've gotten more, and then we find out that actually the shape tricked us. So conservation of volume is not perfect. That's for sure. We do not get it and then universally apply it. But in a Piagetian conservation test, where we take two objects that are the same and we've agreed that they have the same amount of volume in them, and in front of the observer, pour it into another container that is a different shape, I'll bet you can do that. I'm pretty sure you're going to be aware that no magic happened. Because once you get conservation of volume, you get the concept that even though it might now look different than it did before, it has not fundamentally changed. So we kind of can still get tricked comparing apples to oranges, right? Where you've got this bottle shaped like this and that bottle shaped like that. That can trick us as adults. So we're not perfect at it, but we will not make the mistake that a 4-year-old will make, right? And typically an 8-year-old won't make that mistake either. Conservation of mass tends to come next, and this is the one with the Play-Doh, where you make two balls and then you flatten one of the balls right in front of the child. The pre-operational child will think, usually they'll think that the one that's been smashed has more because it's covering more of the table. Occasionally they'll say the ball has more because it's taller. But one way or another, they think one of them has changed, even though they didn't witness anything occurring except for smashing, right? Or you can roll it into a snake. That'll also trigger their lack of logic. But once we have number and length and volume, it becomes more likely that a child will also recognize mass. But they tend to go in this sequence. It's not simultaneous. Area. This is one, again, a lot of adults still struggle with, where you have, okay, so you ask, do the cows have the same amount of grass to eat? And in the left-hand panel, it's 6 squares of green that is supposed to be playing the role of grass, and they're all in the same position. And then in the right-hand panel, all they've done is spread out the squares. And it's kind of analogous to the conservation of number. Us adults would just count the squares and say there's still 6, so we know that it's the same area being covered, even though even our brains might have a little difficulty with this. Area is complicated. So even though our adult brains might say, I'm not sure, but all I know is you had 1 by 1 cubes and then you spread them out. it's got to be the same. Even if we don't understand the geometry behind it, we know it has to still be the same. And again, the child witnesses you just spreading it out. So all we have is squares of grass and we spread them out. And the pre-operational child will say, now the cow on the right has more. A child who's achieved conservation and us adults will say, even if I don't understand exactly why, I know that there are 6 squares of grass still to eat. Nothing has changed. It's the same amount. So some of these questions are kind of complicated, and they sort of are hard for us all of our lives, but at least we don't make the mistake of just watching it spread out and think suddenly there's more. Weight comes next, and so it's kind of similar to mass. Obviously, mass and weight oftentimes go hand in hand, not always. You know, a ball of lead will weigh more than a ball of balsa wood that's the same size as the ball of lead. So, you know, we know that they tend to go hand in hand if it's made of the same material, but not necessarily if they are different materials. Like, as adults, recognize those things. A child, a pre-operational child, just like thinking that smashing the ball of clay will make it have more, will think that if you smash it, it'll make it way more. So if there is more, the child too tightly believes that that means that it weighs more. So by usually 8 or 9 years old, children will start to realize that weight tends to go hand in hand with mass, but it's not always perfect. But they do know that just changing the shape is not going to cause it to weigh more. They do know that. So that's what we call conservation of weight. And then in a very tightly connected, analogous part of it, volume displacement. And so now this is kind of complicated. Maybe even as you're sitting here right now, you're not really able to enunciate what happens when you put something in water and it displaces the water. You may not be able to explain exactly what's going on, but you know that, for example, if you fill the bathtub too full and then put your body into it, you may cause the water to go out, right? Because you're going to displace, your body is going to displace part of the water. Like you know those kinds of concepts, that if you put a brick into a full bucket, it'll cause it to overflow. You know those things. One of the things that you also know is that if you take something that has a certain amount of mass and weight, and then just smush it into a different shape, like they're showing in the right-hand panel, that's not going to cause it to displace the water differently than if it's in a different, like if they're both balls, they'll displace the same amount of water as if they made it into sort of like a heart shape over there on the right-hand panel. It's still going to displace the same amount of water. It's more about the weight than it is about the shape. Now, as an adult, and you being an adult listening to me, it's possible that you might be aware that shape can have an effect on how much water is displaced, can't it? You can take a giant steel ship, fill it full of products that are in giant steel containers, and it'll float. If you took that same amount of steel, all the mass, all the things that are in there, and made it into a ball, it would probably sink, right? Like take all the air out of it and it's probably going to sink. So you know it's a little bit more complicated, but what I'm talking about again is if you take 2 balls, we smush one of those balls and put it now into the water, is the smushing going to cause it to displace something different? And it's not. You're taking 2 dense balls and taking those dense balls and making them into a dense other shape. You know that that's not going to cause it to displace a different amount of water. And so that's the thing that children start to achieve, is that awareness that this object, even if it looks different or if it feels different or if it seems to appear to be different, that doesn't affect its fundamental properties. So that's a pretty big leap to go from a child who thinks right in front of me, magically, I guess there's more, to a child who becomes aware that things don't magically happen like that. It's fundamentally the same. And so now I can start to think in a more formal, logical way once I've got these conservation principles in my back pocket. So I'm going to be ready when it's time to move into formal operations because of this presence of conservation. So these are the big skills that are acquired during middle childhood that Piaget said were super important for setting children up to think in logical ways starting in adolescence. And that's what we'll talk about in the next age bracket.